Right.
Whoever thought that using the word woman would be so inflammatory?
I don't know if we really knew 100% what this would become.
Like, it's idiotic to me that we're arguing about this, that this is even an argument to begin with.
It's so easy to brush it off.
Critics claim you're not being inclusive.
That is so not the point. And making that the point is so abusive to women.
This is not an issue that you can be neutral on.
Oh my gosh, this whole system is rigged. And so many women who have never experienced this.
The population who are dying at the hands of the system are women.
This is gonna get me in trouble.
If we feel like something is on its way to take it from us, we're going to take it back.
Welcome back to the show, ladies. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing two remarkable women, Jess and Kallie, the founders of Birth Belongs to Women. This is a grassroots movement that empowers women through the ancient sacred practice of doula work. Their mission is to honor birth as a feminine rite of passage, and they remind us that birth work comes from a deep ancestral connection that every woman holds in her bones. I'm so excited to dive into their experience as doulas, the story behind the movement, and their take on our current maternity care system. Welcome to the podcast, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
So I'm so excited. I've been following Kallie and the Birth Belongs to Women movement that you guys are both part of for quite a while now, and I just love it. And it has become such an ironically controversial topic today. Ironically, right? Because it's like,
Right.
whoever thought that using the word woman would be so inflammatory and controversial? But here we are in 2024 having to state obvious facts like this. And you are one of the few birth accounts that I see truly taking a stand in this area. And so for that, I just have to commend you, first of all, for saying the hard thing, because it's not always easy. And you truly are one of the pioneers of women and doulas holding the line in the sand and saying, like, hey, this is a space that belongs to women, and we're going to die on that hill. And not very many people are willing to be that brave.
Right. And we kind of knew that from the beginning, actually, when me and Jess met and decided that, or sat down and decided we were going to do the Birth Belongs to Women thing. I had that name on my heart for a really long time. And when I opened it up to her, she was like, we're going to get pushed back. And we kind of stared at each other and like laughed about it. We're like, of course we're going to get pushed back, but that's so silly. Let's do it anyways.
I love that. How did this start? Like, where did this idea come from? Like, what started it?
Well, it started, really intentionally with me and Jessica's meeting, which was she hired me to be her doula. And we were both in very pivotal moments of our life. She was going to have she was planning her home birth after C-section, her HBAC. And I was moving into this part of my doula journey where I was like unlearning everything about doula work. I had been a doula for 4.5, 5 years at that point, and I was really, I wasn't impressed with the state of the doula business. I hated that it was a business, so I was stepping into that part of my life and was just like, you know what, I'm going to be a doula, and which is I'm going to be the birthy woman in my village. I'm not going to be a business. I'm not going to have contracts and agreements. I just want to meet with women, connect with them, become like best friends with them, and then attend their births. And coincidentally enough, that's what Jessica was looking for in a doula, which Jessica, I don't know if you want to share about your journey in looking for a doula, which led to finding me.
Yeah. So my birth with Eli was your traditional, just kind of OB care. I trusted that. I thought that was exactly what everybody did. I was a C-section baby myself, and I was really determined to not have a C-section with my son, but it was kind of like that is what fate laid out for me. And I believe for a reason now, but I was heartbroken and I didn't do any of the homework beforehand. And I speak about that openly a lot. So I knew that when I got pregnant a second time, I knew I wanted the whole opposite, And I was very not trusting for providers, for support. And I knew that I needed support, but I had to do so much healing along the way to really be open to accepting that. I knew that my birth team was so much more important than what I thought the first time. And so I really did so much research. I found Kallie because I went through so many different avenues to find a doula, and I had this amazing midwife, Fadwa, and Midwife 360, the team. You know, they have amazing midwives there. They're very well known here in South Florida, and she recommended a couple doulas. I met with them. I just didn't feel like that connection. And then I did a round of like doula speed dating, and that just didn't really jive with me because I'm like, I just didn't feel like organic. And like, I wanted this person, I pictured my doula being like my best friend. And so I found Kallie's Instagram, and I saw her birth photography, and I was like, oh, maybe I should like, you know, document this moment because this would be like an H-back, you know, this is a great moment. And then I got on the phone with her for a FaceTime call, and I kind of was on the fence, like, do you do doula work too? And she's like, yeah, I do. Like, I do doula work and I do birth photography. And we talked, and I knew it was a wrap. Like, I was like, this is my person. Like, this is who's going to walk with me through this. Like, no brainer. It was just like the stars all aligned, and it just really felt like it was supposed to be. So that's kind of how we met. And I was lit on fire after my HBAC. It was the most empowering thing I have ever done. It's one of the best days of my life. It's one of the best days of my husband's life. It was just so healing all around. And I felt so supported and loved. And it actually made me more like on fire, angry, passionate, all of the things after, because I was like, oh my gosh, this whole system is rigged. And so many women will never experience this. And I remember going to Kallie, and I was like, we have to do more. Like, she was there for a postpartum visit. And I had my newborn baby on me. Like, I don't even know how old she was at the time, but to me, she was just so fresh. And I was like, we have to do more. Like, we have to do something. Like, this is not enough to have this beautiful experience and to not do anything from here. Like, no one's doing anything. Like, we're all just making Instagram posts about things, but like, no one is uniting the forces, I feel like. And she was like, well, I have this idea. And I was like, well, what's your idea? And then her and I just like combined our brains together, and it was a beautiful thing that was born. So.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And I so relate to having a birth experience light a fire inside of you and knowing like more women need to know that this is possible. And the system is rigged and we're being lied to. Like, I just so resonate with that. And so thank you both for doing the work of helping women wake up and see what is possible, and that you don't have to say yes to the things that are being handed to you, the mantra that's being told to you, the narrative that we're being fed about birth and bringing our children into this world. It's so important. What would you say your main message is with Birth Belongs to Women? And how are you looking to impact these experiences women are having in childbirth?
And in the way that Jessica was so changed by her HBAC, I want women outside of the women who are birthing, the women who are attending these births and witnessing this, to realize that when we are welcomed into these spaces as women, fellow women, sisters, friends, cousins, mothers, whatever, we are actively healing this huge wound that is within women regarding birth and understanding birth. And that's why, like I said, her HBAC was equally changing to me. And at that point, I didn't understand how could that be so changing to me when I had witnessed so many home births. I had witnessed so many beautiful home births and so many beautiful HBACs or, these things. But for some reason, it was Jessica's in general that changed me. And it was because we were both on that path together of this is how birth should be. and not to say that the other births that I attended weren't, but there was a certain level that we were on together that said, we understand how powerful this just was, just me as a witness, if women understood how powerful it is to just witness birth like that, how much it can change you. Because at that point, I wasn't about to have another baby at that point. I was a mother, but it had been a while. And I was like, oh my gosh, like walking out of that birth, I was like, I'm changed again,
Yeah.
witnessing healing birth changes me again. And then, so this movement, we're like, with the merch and with the mentorship for doulas, it was this idea that coming together and healing this sister wound, mother wound, altogether birth wound, will go on to heal generations of women. And it can heal generations in the future, and it can heal generations that were, in the past. You see even men wearing "Birth Belongs to Women" shirts, and it's like, that's incredible, because that's another thing. Men, like Jessica said, her birth changed her husband's. It was one of her husband's the best days of his life. So when we have men in this movement that are like, yes, birth is important. Women sitting in birth is important. My partner experiencing this beautiful birth is so important. In this moment belongs to her. It's a healing revolution. And I think in the beginning, we had this idea of birth belongs to women, kind of hoping to join forces with the medical side of things, to be like, hey, we understand the need of you guys, and we look forward to that collaboration. But over time, and as much as we still would like that, I think over time it has shifted out of that collaboration almost into highlighting women in the birth space. I don't know if Jessica, you wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, I think when we first started, I don't know if we really knew, quite honestly, 100% what this would become. Like, we were like, this is really cool. This is a really cool idea. And then it was the people resonating, women resonating. And I say people because men were resonating with it too. Like, conversations were being had that were never had before, just from a sweatshirt or a crew neck or a t-shirt, and people were connecting the dots with their people, and it became a community now. And now we were, spreading beyond just Florida. We were spreading all over the United States, and then we had supporters in, different countries, and it just kind of spread. And then we realized, well, our impact is more than just collaborating with a medical system who may or may not. And we do have many, supporters who do work as nurses, some who are midwives in hospitals. We have, just an array of people who stand with the message of birth belongs to women, and that is inspiring in itself. I think that ultimately the trailblazers are everybody who's a part of it. So yeah, Kallie and I may have started this, but it is being completely taken and led, and we are just following the calling and following the lead of everybody who believes in the message as much as we do. And I agree. I think that we originally went from that standpoint of collaboration, and then we were like, this is so much more than that. And it was unreal at the time to think that there was more than that at the time,
Why do you think it caught wind so quickly and grew as fast as it did?
I think for a couple of reasons. I think that the phrase "birth belongs to women" was so stunning to people. Like, it literally
something you just didn't say.
It was something you never said. Yeah. And so
if you said it in today's time, you were lit on fire, and it was
that like it was like it's almost, and I don't want to call it an award, but it was almost just like this it was like an award where women saw that in the text that said "birth belongs to women" and go, no kidding, yeah, that does belong to me. Like, that is true. Like, that moment that I just went through, whether it was bad or whether it was good or life-changing or traumatizing, that moment belonged to me. And I deserved that. That's why we were even seeing, I remember being posted or tagged in post on Instagram of a woman wearing our "With Women Not the System, Birth Belongs to Women" shirt, and she said, "I'm wearing this on the way to go have a C-section."
Mm.
Because even regardless of the way that her birth was going, I don't know if it was an elective or it was a repeat C-section, she still had that like that moment to herself where she's like, regardless of what's happening, this birth belongs to me, and this birth belongs to it. This birth belonged to my mother, and this birth belongs to my sister. So it was this that statement in itself was super shocking and groundbreaking, and I'm like grateful, and I'm so it lived that statement had lived in my body for like 3 years. So the fact that I got it out and it worked was amazing. But just the fact of and I'm gonna call it ownership because
Yeah.
women don't believe they have ownership over that part of their
Yeah.
lives.
It's
Um,
that reclamation of your like self and your innate power. And I think birth has the ability to completely transform, and you can bloom and blossom through it. And I know from experience, it can also completely break you and shake you. And that power that embodies in that statement, I think that is what resonated with everybody. And it was this collective feeding to that in a positive way.
Wow. Yeah.
Life changing. It really is.
What would you say to the critics who claim you're not being inclusive and, have take up, aim at you for all of those? I'm sure you get lots of pushback. How do you handle that, and what do you say to that?
it's so easy to brush it off. Surprisingly, because in the beginning, when it first happened, which was like about 5 months after the beginning of Birth Belongs to Women, I remember at first kind of like, oh no, we're about to be in a spotlight because that is a very huge group of people who are
Yeah.
ready to take you down.
Yeah.
But once it happened and we kind of just sat with it, we're like, that is so not the point. And taking
Mm.
that and making that the point is so borderline abusive to women. To say what you're going through and this mission that we had is so minute that we can take it away from you and yell at you for using the word woman. So it at this point when it happens, it's almost exciting for us because when people see Birth Belongs to Women and see the pushback that we get for using the word women, they almost come to join to get on fire with us. Like, how could you yell at these women for using the word women? Like, it's exciting because as much as they think that they are pushing this pushback and thinking that we're going to fall back to it, we just kind of get more strong in our stance.
Mm.
It does not sway us even a little bit. And it's exciting to be so passionate about something where you can get pushed back like the way we do and just it's literally a shoulder shrug. Like we are like, whatever. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So
and this isn't about you.
it's not
I
about
think
that.
that's what I'm hearing is you're like, that's not the point. We didn't
Yeah.
create it to be like an anti, you know, trans or anti-men or anything like that. This is just something we are owning as women, as a female experience, as a birth is a deeply personal, profound experience that we have gone through as women. And we created it so that women could own that, not as an anti anything else. That's what I'm hearing you say. And so the people that make issue with it, I kind of have a similar belief. I'm like, because I remember in the birth community, especially the online birth community, but everywhere, it seemed like it was this huge push to use
Mhm.
gender inclusive language. And as a birth worker and doula myself, I felt all this pressure even before becoming Insta famous. It's like in the birth community, in order to like even speak and have a voice, it's like you were pressured to use this kind of language, like birthing person, whether it
Yeah.
was a doula training or in your prenatals, or you look up evidence-based birth, like all the major organizations had this massive shift under this pressure to use gender inclusive language. And I remember seeing all this controversy online and going, this is not an issue that you can be neutral on. Like
Yeah.
it's almost idiotic to me that we're arguing about this, that this is even an argument to begin with. Like, I have no problem if a trans person is like, I want to give birth and I want you to call me
Yeah.
a husband or a mother or a father or a birthing person. Like, okay, no, that means nothing to me. But for you to attack me using the word woman when that's who I am,
Yeah.
it's like, wait, who are you to tell me what language to use to call myself or to my clients or the people in my audience? And so I totally like admire your tenacity and your like, hey, like just shrug it off. You can attack me all you want. You don't get to police my language. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, you don't get to come on my page on my account and police me because I choose to use certain words.
And to me too, like I will always use those terms because if you really, and I'm not a huge statistics person, I'm not really someone who's going to pull up statistics all the time. I think they're very helpful, but we know, and it is common sense, that the population who is experiencing the most obstetrical abuse and who are dying at the hands of, the system during birth are women. And regardless of gender ideology, that is the point. Not what, and like you said, like if somebody came up to me and said, I would love for you to be my birth support, but these are the pronouns I go by, or this is what I identify as. I would respect that because I'm not a hateful person. But like you said, to change my entire world, and the language I use, just it's not something we will ever do.
Yeah. And I think every woman, with no matter what your gender ideology is, no matter what your pronouns are or your sex orientation, like every person deserves advocacy and support in labor. Like no matter what you call yourself, everyone deserves that. And there will be people who align with certain doulas. There are birth accounts for everyone. That's what I love about this online space. Whether I agree with other birth workers or not, I know that there is someone for everyone. And we can celebrate that. We can love one another in our differences. We can support each other and the vast diversity of the community we serve. And so, and we can do that, and we can support women, we can support men, we can support families and stay true to our values. We can do that. And I think that that's something that doulas need to hear. It's almost like we need to be given permission to like, yes, if this is something you believe in, you have permission to stand for that, even if you get pushback. And you guys have been pioneers in that space of leading the way and taking a stand when it is very uncomfortable sometimes.
Say you have the right to serve the way you want to serve, and it doesn't have to be aligned with a system, and it doesn't have to be approved by a system. It can just be, a birth friend, a birth sister.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't resonate with you, then it doesn't resonate with you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's okay for you to be like, oh wait, I don't know if this is resonating with me, or if I like agree with this message, or if I feel connected to this message. I don't feel connected to every single thing that's out there, like I think it takes discernment in those certain, but in those certain situations. And I think that we've had to hold really firm. And then also it's been really freeing to just not say anything about it and just completely stay true to our mission. And I did say recently on my Instagram, and I did make a reel saying like woman is not a bad word, that, kind of took off. And, that is true. And I personally believe that. And I think that, we have done a good job. And even though I know other people may have different opinions about that, it is disheartening to be labeled or to think that we're carrying out some type of hate when that's just so not what's in our hearts. But we also have to stay true to like who we know we are and not give in to that pressure from other people to, speak on that,
Yeah, for sure. And there's even, I feel like, some hypocrisy in it that I remember encountering around Mother's Day. And I was like, I'm watching all these accounts who poo-poo using the word mother, and they're like having this strong push towards inclusivity and gender inclusive language and making a point to do this. And then all of a sudden Mother's Day comes around and they're like, Happy Mother's Day. I was like, wait. So we're not allowed to use the word mother unless it's going to make you look good and you're virtue signaling and like, let's wish all these mothers happy Mother's Day. But the rest of the year, 364 days, you're not allowed to use the word mother. And I remember doing a reel about it, thinking this is gonna get me in trouble. Like this is one of those take a stand moments. And I'm like, what? Why are we doing this? Like watching this happen? And it got more likes and shares than probably any of my other reels I've created. I was like, wow, there
Because
is a
it's
silent majority.
amazing how many people are waiting for others to just take a
Yes.
stand and say something. And it's more people than we think.
Yeah. 100%. Like it's the silent majority that are like, I just want to be acknowledged, to feel seen. And I think women are at that point where they're like, we have felt so ignored in this system that is predominantly dominated by men and obstetrics, creating the laws, the rules, the protocols, the policies, dictating to us. And not just men, but there's women as well. But it's these experts who are telling us what we're allowed to do in birth or not do. And I think women are fed up and we're seeing the churn. We're seeing the women come out with birth trauma, with disconnected, relationships to their babies, like bonding and golden hours being sabotaged and interventions happening that didn't need to happen. The whole physiological process being disrupted, coming out the other end, realizing like, this is not what I wanted. And having seen someone advocate truly for women in a way that says, this is something you own. This is this birth experience, this thing you're doing with your body, this magical sacred thing is something our women and our mothers and our grandmothers have done for thousands of years. And it was predominantly a woman focused thing. Like we had tribes and communities and went away with women, and women saw women giving birth and tending to newborns. And it was a sacred feminine rite of passage. Can you speak to that a little bit and like how that guides your work in what you do today in modern day society and creating a culture where this is a sacred, honored experience?
The foundation of the mentorship of Birth Belongs to Women is saying the fact that you are a woman and you care about other women and you love other women and you love the birth process means that you are certified enough to go sit in a birth with a woman. And we have seen the growth that I have seen in these women with just hearing that permission. And again, like, is it my permission to give? I think so. I did a doula training that cost me $1,600 and I opened it once and was like, this isn't going to teach me anything. I can't learn from this. So, the basis of the community of women, just all of us together talking about birth, about trauma, about, healing wounds that might make us not serve women. There's a lot of women who can't serve women great because they had bad relationships with their mothers. And they don't ever think about that because that's not really talked about in doula trainings, but they have had really hard relationships with other women in their life. And so that will leach into the way that they might serve women. We just cover that about how being a woman is more than good enough to go sit with another woman in birth. And you don't have to have, again, like I said, you don't have to have a million different trainings. They're nice to have, to learn. And you don't need to be some profound expert in, spinning babies, which is great to have, but you don't have to have all these things to love on a woman in her birth space. And like I said, this philosophy has given permission to women to go sit with other women in their birth spaces, and they've just done it. They've taken that permission, and with no experience, not even giving birth themselves, they have gone and attended the most incredible births. One of the girls in our mentorship, her name's Hava. She was a rocket scientist at NASA and just decided that she wanted to be a doula. And she did the mentorship, and within a couple months, I'd say like 6 or 7 months, she was attending a birth of a first-time mom who was giving birth in a yurt. And she was just in that space with her, taking care of her. And you're like,
She's
from
the best.
from rocket scientist to a doula in a yurt, and it
And
required nothing
now
but
soon to be
acceptance.
midwife.
Yeah, and now
So,
she's soon to be a midwife. So it's one of those things that
Oh
it's
my
like
gosh.
that focus on, like you
Yeah.
said, the ancestral. That's why I call it. That's why I call it traditional, the traditional way. I feel like we are
Yeah.
really following a traditional way of being birth workers.
And yeah, it is. It's women supporting women, which is what we're all here for. What do you how do you feel about like the terminology we're using now with doulas, birth workers? Now there's like this whole other controversy in the birth space about, well, now we can't call ourselves doulas anymore because there's certain doulas or training programs or hospitals that are trying to like pull the doulas into the system and make it requirement that you have to have certain certifications or approvals, or like there was this whole controversy about, should doulas even be certified? Should doulas be licensed? Should doulas be, under the medical system? And then, oh, we're not going to call ourselves a doula anymore because, well, doulas are with the system. So now we're birth workers. Like, and there's this whole, like, now there's probably even more names. I don't even know. I'm not like up to date on all of them, but like, what's your take on that? What language do you use, or where do you feel like that conversation is going and headed?
I think that the same way with women, if we feel like something is on its way to take it from us, we're going to take it back. And as far as like the names, I think everybody chooses the name they resonate with the most. And I will always use the word doula just because it's Latin for servant. And
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, it couldn't have been a better, it's not, there's no better word for it. I love the term servant and having a servant's heart. So, as far as the medical system taking over doulas, we will fully reject that. I even reject it down to the insurance part of it. I reject it. I don't think that those two things should ever meet. And I think that if we encourage that, and even have like neutral stances on it, we are just so fast to the way of losing the goodness of the doula
yes,
world.
it's a guise, in
Yeah.
our opinion. I think we both agree that it's a tricky, slippery slope to just kind of getting in bed with the system, which we already know the way that was originally,
Yeah. Now, why is
proposed
that
to women.
important, and what do women need to know? Why is it important that doulas are not a part of the system?
There's a huge issue in the doula world, not even just the doula world, in the midwifery world too, where there's
Mhm.
resentment that builds in this work because of the things that we're experiencing. When you're seeing birth trauma, you will get secondhand trauma, and that creates that resentment, and that creates, you'll a lot of cynical beliefs around birth, where it's like,
I was
I'm
going to
just
say it
showing up.
hardens you.
Yeah, it hardens you, and you truly it's a disconnect. I talk about it a lot, that the women that you serve in as a doula, should every single woman should truly be your dream client. And that comes with saying no a lot, and realizing I can't serve you the way that I feel like I can serve you best. If it comes with, oh, you want insurance, which means that we have to do this amount of prenatals and they need to cover this and you need to have proof of this. Yeah.
It is one
Yeah.
of the most intimate moments of a woman's life, and it should feel like that all the time. It
Yeah.
should feel like friendship. It should feel like love and support, and it should feel genuine all
It's
the
really
time.
hard. It's really hard to do that when there's just a list of rules and contracts you're following.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible for doulas to support women in hospital births and remain servant-hearted toward women?
It has to be the right client.
Mhm.
It has to be the right woman. It has to be someone who, although you are serving them in the hospital, they are taking radical responsibility over the birth and their outcomes, and saying that if I get the epidural, if I have an OB on call that wrecks my birth, if I have a nurse that wrecks my birth, I'm not going to throw the blame on you.
Mhm.
And if something happens in my birth where we're all hoodwinked and it goes completely south and it hurts you, I'm not going to blame you, because that's another thing. Women hire doulas for their hospital births, expecting that they are this. And again, doulas are great and doulas are needed in hospitals. I'll never deny that. But when doulas are carrying the weight of what they're experiencing, which is trauma, coercion, abuse, it creates, they become shells of humans. So there has to be, like I said, that certain level of connection. And even like with when you're supporting a home birth, if it goes to the hospital, there's a transfer, there has to be deep connection in that moment with the woman you're serving. Just because you guys are going from home to the hospital. And you can't, if there's not that connection, there's a big wall in between you, and that's where resentment grows. And even feeling a feeling of like, oh, am I even good at this? That's why one of the reasons I stopped doing hospital birth, because I was like, oh gosh, I don't think I'm good at this. Because all the women I was serving in the hospital were getting epidurals, going to C-sections. They were not following the birth plans that we had talked about. So I was like, gosh, I don't really think I'm a good doula. But it really just was that lack of connection. And that's just the whole thing. So
Yeah.
I think women should serve other women in the hospitals, but I do think there has to be a clear conversation about the expectations of the birth and your role in that place.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what role do you envision me having? Those are really important conversations that doulas and clients need to have, because I think you're absolutely right. There's this like oftentimes this unspoken expectation that women have that the doula is going to rescue me or advocate for me or be my like shield of protection, fighting for me against this evil medical system and all these unnecessary interventions, when that's a really heavy burden and an unfair burden to place on a doula, because she doesn't have that kind of power. She can't be your voice, and she's not going to be able to live up to those expectations. It's going to set both of you up for failure. And so you're right, taking radical responsibility, I think, is a core tenet that every woman needs to be willing to take on for her birth, and not expect that the doula is taking this on or coming to be in the rescuer role, because that puts the woman in the victim role. And women are not victims. We are radically responsible for our births, and we have complete power and autonomy. And every decision we make, including where to give birth and who to have there, is a part of that autonomy. So not having unrealistic expectations on doulas or anyone really to just swoop in and protect you and save you from birth. Like, I think those are really important conversations to have. And as doulas and women giving birth, like, what are we expecting from our support team? What is their role? What do I need from you? How can you support me? Those are some really important conversational topics. What's something you really like wish women understood the most who are entering this current birth space, whether in the hospital or in the home, preparing for, say, a first-time pregnancy? What's something that they need to know, or what they could do to prepare?
One of the biggest things, I feel like I'm saying this over and over again, because a lot of women are asking me, hey, what book should I read? You know, what provider should I use? Whatever. I think that one of the most important things, and this goes back to Birth Belongs to Women, is connecting with women in your community. Go to birth circles. Reach out to women who had a hospital birth at your local hospital, and then reach out to a woman who had a home birth at your local in your local area. But connect with women and listen to stories. I think that those stories, and you know, that's an ancestral practice in its own, is sitting around and telling stories, listening to wisdom, hearing, you know, experiences, whether bad or good, but really just connecting with women. And like we said, knowing that their authority, you know, the second you get a positive line, you haven't lost any part of your body and you don't have to run to a doctor and hand them 50% of the process. You have full authority. But yeah, I am so for community of women and being in, and not cheating yourself of that experience.
For women who are birthing in a hospital for whatever reason, whether financial or they have some high risk condition, or maybe just don't have availability to find midwifery care, or feel comfortable at home, regardless of, you know, why, because there are still so many women in that category who truly want an unmedicated birth and, an empowered birth, but find that the hospital is the best choice, or maybe their partner, isn't comfortable with the home birth yet. I say yet because I believe truly they all do come around eventually if they're really supporting their woman. But for those women in that situation, how can they, what's most important for them to know and prepare for themselves to really be in a positive space and taking full ownership for their birth in entering into a hospital birth?
One of the most important things to do is to look at the statistics of the hospital you are going to be birthing in. It's public information. You can see C-section rates. You can go to medicalgrade.com or whatever it's called and look at your providers in your area and see what their rates are. If they are doing a lot of unnecessary C-sections, this is all public information, and go and choose wisely. I always say, the next best option is to do a midwifery group in a hospital if you can find one. Like I said, doesn't matter. There's a lot of, midwives are still in the hospital. They're still, they're midwives is what they're saying. I say a woman sometimes is a woman, and you need to have a womanly figure in your space sometimes. That can be very game changing. And then another thing that I really want women to sit down with their husbands, partners, and say, and this is something that needs to be talked about with doulas too, but husbands are truly the protectors of birth. When they're in those hospital rooms. A doula can only do so much because a doula can be kicked out. If a doula is, ramming up with opinions and trying to speak over this and that does not settle well. So having a conversation with doula and husband about what their roles is, and husbands having that protection role, gives them purpose. And like, men love to have purpose. Men love to be explained the purpose that they need to have. So telling them, I need you to protect me from this. And I need you to, if I feel like if I can't speak up for myself, that's your job to speak up for me, because this is our family. And this is your first role of protection over the family. So I've had that conversation many times, and it's always been so great. And, instead of men cowering over to the couch in the hospital room, they have that, it's like they're like suited up with armor. Like, this is my space. This is my wife. This is my family. That's my child. And so they have that eagerness to protect and serve. Yeah, that's what I can. Jessica, do you have anything else to add about?
I think you covered it really well. And I think that they just want to know what's their role in this. And I think that sometimes when we're supporting women, they're just kind of standing there and you're like, okay, you know what? I need you to do this. And I think that there's so much communication beforehand of going into a hospital that needs to happen. And it's not always to necessarily expect that don't expect to go in with your birth plan just being like respected and all of that. It's about that your support team that you're walking in that door with, knowing what their role is. And I think I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that it's possible for doulas to serve in the birth space, and they are absolutely needed.
Yeah.
The reality is that more women give birth in the hospital. So yeah, they're absolutely needed. And I just think that together we can change that, yeah.
Well, can you speak to doula burnout, and how can doulas create sustainable work if it's not a business, or we're not, asking or, setting a price and creating something that's sustainable, not just for us and but our families, and wanting to be a doula, not just for like a year or two, because I think the normal or average is like 2 years, and then there's a high rate of burnout. Can you speak to that a bit, and how you balance that with an approach that says like doula work should not be a business?
Absolutely. I do think 100% doulas are worth every cent that they charge. Whether it is low hundreds to high thousands, based on the doula, but doulas are worth every ounce of money, and doulas should not feel afraid to charge for birth support ever. It is, it's a lot of work. I don't think that we talk about it a lot, but being a birth worker is a lot of work. It's a month when you're on call, that's months of your life. I haven't attended births in a while as I'm in a transitional period, but that's months of your life laying by a phone that could go off at any minute. You're losing sleep. You are at births for sometimes 24 to 48 hours off of very little sleep. So charging is not the enemy in doula work. So starting there. But one of the biggest things to resolving burnout is I feel like a broken record when I'm saying this, but you have to serve your dream clients.
Mm.
You can't say yes to everyone. There has to be boundaries. I got pushed back when I said no more to hospitals, and even when I said no more to hospitals, I was actively attending hospital births because women would find me and say, "Hey, I know that you said no, but I think I need you." And I'd say yes. There's always that part of your heart that's I'm going to serve. But having those boundaries that are like, if you want a doula and you want me as your doula, it's because you're doing the work and you're not expecting me to do the work for you. I can't spoon feed you empowerment. I can't spoon feed you the authority over your birth. I need you to be my dream clients. And this is what I ask a lot of women. What is your dream client? Like, what do you want your business as a doula to look like? And for me, it was, I want to be the birthing woman in a village that does not come to you stacked with documents, papers, pictures. I want to be the one that just comes to you. We hang out, we talk, we chat, we laugh. You might tell me about some things that you're struggling with your pregnancy or some fears that might come up, but it's a conversation. It's not some, paper we're filling out. It's a friendship that we're building so that at the end, and I feel like it's the grand finale of the friendship, is I'm going to sit with you in your birth. And we're already so connected because of, the prior, I do a whole different look at prenatals. My prenatals aren't education because they're seeking out their education themselves. They might double check with me about things like, what do you think about that? Like, I'm kind of having a rough feeling. I think another thing is doulas tend to bear those things. Like, hey, my provider just told me that I have to do this testing, but I don't want to. What do you think? And it's like, I can't make that call for you. If you keep doing that over and over again, where you're like, should you get the GBS test? I don't know. Should you take antibiotics? I don't know because I'm not you. There has to be a deep connection with intuition on each other too. Like, what do you think? When I was Jessica's doula, she had been in prodromal labor for 3 days. And I tell this story a lot because it's a big deal. But in the birth space, we're pretty anti in any kind of induction, whether it's pumping, whether it's whatever. But she had been in prodromal labor for 3 days and was like, Kallie, and she's over 42 weeks at this point, and she calls me. I'm in TJ Maxx. I've been waiting for this baby and for her to call me to be in labor because I'm like, it's any minute now. And she's like, I have to do something, like basically telling me this baby is asking me to help move things along. And I sat down in TJ Maxx in the rug section in between two rugs because I'm like, oh, duty calls, and I'm listening to her, and I'm like, what do you want to do? And her intuition said, I need to take this herb to help my contractions be stronger because I can't do another 4 days of prodromal labor. I'm not sleeping. And if I would have been the doula that was like, oh, but that herbal inductions can lead to this, this, and this, I would have taken her off of her intuition.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she would have had the beautiful HBAC that she got. I mean, her home birth was beautiful. And it was not because of me. It was because I trusted her, because she was making the choices for herself. And she wasn't asking me, should I not? She was telling me, this is kind of what my intuition is leading me to. And I said, I trust you. So you have to, and that's another thing, you have to trust the women that you're serving. You have to trust that they are making the decisions that are best going to serve them and not to appease me as the doula. So, burnout can happen when you are losing sleep and when you are doing this, but when you attend those births with those women that you love so much, you just feel the burnout like soak down to another level. Like, oh, I'm not burning out. I just needed to take a nap. I just was at this birth for too long. And I actually love this woman and I love this work. And I did I think 4 years straight of being on call for 6 to 7 months, and there I don't think that I experienced that burnout because I was so true to what I wanted in this work. And we have, as doulas, we have the choice to decide how we want to serve. And there's no, book or doc or there's nothing that can really take us away from that if we're just true in understanding that
Yeah.
doula work is just soul work,
That's so beautifully stated. And it really is. It's when we get back to the call that, that true calling and passion as a doula to serve and empower women, and realizing it all comes back to that. Like, it's not about us, it's about her and
Yeah.
the birth that she has in her heart. And for her, a successful birth might look like one thing that might look completely different for me. I'm not supporting her in the kind of birth I think I want to have, or projecting my, desire onto her birth. And I think that's one of the hardest lessons as a doula to learn, is that, supporting women looks different and unique to each woman. And when we can get back to that call, that call that brought us there to begin with, that passion to just support women and like have it be just about that without anything muddying the waters. And
Yeah.
it's a lot more clean to do it that way from that heart than to try to like manufacture or project something that I think she should do, or that I think the birth should go this way. Or, like I'm hearing you like share, and it's like, it's really just the true heart of a doula is really supporting unadulterated, like from the pure heart of like, I want you to be empowered in your intuition, even if that means you make a decision I wouldn't make.
Yeah.
I want you to trust yourself, not
And
trust me. Like, and I've noticed that even in labors I've attended where women will ask me questions, and I can feel how much trust they have for me. And I can even feel like, if, regardless of like, if I recommend one thing or another, they will probably trust what I say and lean on that. And my work as a doula is not to convince them of one way or another. It's to like, in that middle ground, bring them back to their own power. Like,
right.
what I want for you is for you to trust yourself and not put me in that position over your intuition. And that's really hard for doulas who don't understand like that is their role at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah. And I think too, I think that's why a lot of even the world of doulas just has a bad rap,
Yeah.
because a lot of doulas over, and I hate the term scope of doulas or scope of practice for doulas. I hate it.
Mm.
It makes me so irritated. But there is a scope of authority where it's like you can't have too much, or you're not even allowing this woman to really experience her birth the way that she needed to. I
Mm.
also say too, that as doulas, you have the full right to choose how you want to experience birth, which means that it's okay if you do not want to be the doula that is constantly attending inductions. And it is okay if you are not the doula that is only seeing births with an epidural. That's okay. And that is valid. And again, that's one of those things that can protect you in the doula business burnout
Yeah.
area.
Jessica, how have you put up healthy boundaries in your doula work, or even turned away clients? Like, what does that look like in the work you do?
She's got a good story on it. She's good at this.
Had a
Oh,
feeling.
yeah, the first time I was very excited when Kallie opened up the mentorship, and it was in the beginning stages, and we had just started Birth Belongs to Women, but they were still kind of separate at the time. And I was like, can I join? That's really cool that you did that. And she's like, come on in, like, come join this. Like, let's see you do this. And I'm like, am I even qualified for that? And she's like, girl, you just had an HVAC. Like, you're already a doula. Like, that's all you need. Like, you don't need anything else. So coming to that realization, and I was like, well, I don't know if I could serve though, Kallie. Like, I don't know if I can go and serve in a hospital. I think I have too much of my own stuff that I would bring in. And she was like, well, you don't have to. You do get to choose everything that she just said. You do get to choose how you want to experience being a doula. And you know, I was like, okay, well then I'm in, like, no question about it. I feel so called to this. And one of the first times someone reached out to me, needing birth support was for a hospital birth. And I had to look at myself and be like, do I really want to get into a birth? Get into a birth, because that's the language that's thrown around a lot. Like, you need to get into a birth. And it was like, I don't feel that this is how I want to experience my first birth. I don't think that this is how I want to start this journey. And I'm happy that I was able to have a network of other beautiful friends, doulas, who I could recommend this mom to. And my first step into being a doula, I was like, okay, these are the things I want. I don't want to be on call all the time. I want to take maybe a handful of births a year, if maybe 3 a year. I really don't want to do this all the time, because I want to be so connected to the people that I serve. I want them to become like my best friends. And that's requires a lot of energy from me. I have 2 toddlers, and I have to look at my role as a stay-at-home mom, and I have to make birth work be enjoyable for me. And I'm holding myself to the standard that when I step in that space, that I can leave my stuff at the door and be there to serve. And in order to do that, I can't have this chaotic energy of being on call for so many people. And so it's really learning how to say no and being okay with that response, and people actually welcoming that, and realizing that when I say no, I'm doing that woman the biggest favor, because I'm opening up the door for her to find who's really meant to serve her. If my heart and my intuition and my gut tells me no, then it's no. Maybe it's because of it. Maybe it's not even like a connection thing. Maybe it's just a time thing, and I don't want it to be stressful, or whatever it might be. However, the world ends up working out. But I've really like felt a lot of like pride in that for myself, as being able to say no and be able to say yes. Like, heck yes, I am so excited. Like, this is the role that I'm going to take, and I'm going to step into this slowly, because that is what feels good to me.
Yeah.
I know that that's different for everybody, but that's what feels great to me. And I've really enjoyed slowly stepping into this.
Yeah. And that's such a great way to start your doula career, not taking on the burden or the feeling like I have to do this, like having your yes be yes and your no be no. And I love that, saying like, well, my no opens up this woman for her hell yes doula.
Right.
Like, but often as doulas, we're so tempted to like say yes. And I think that's just part of our psychology as women who love to support, who love to like put our needs aside to serve others. It comes with this like innate, I think, personality that many of us have had to overcome of people pleasing.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to say no, especially doulas. We just take on everyone's burdens and we do what we're told, but that's the work of maturing in who we are as women, as doulas, as mothers, is having those boundaries. So I just admire you and commend you for that. And you can even get pushback. I'm sure that client probably wasn't happy to hear that no, but at the end of the day, you were being true to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you see as the future of birth work or birth culture? Like, where is this all going?
Oh, we hope so badly it goes backwards. Yeah. Hope that we are not going to see any more progression in the business side of it. My dream for Birth Belongs to Women in like 5 years, and I've told Jessica about this, is that it is just a reminder to the women in our community that one day there won't even need to be a doula business anymore, because our sisters and friends and cousins and mothers and grandmothers are so excited to serve the women in their community during birth that it's we don't even have to think about getting a doula. Like, no, I don't need to hire a doula for my home birth because my sister loves me so much. And she's so excited to be with me during my birth that that's what my doula is. That's who my doula is going to be. I think that uh, over time, more I would love to see more women be more interested in birth and physiological birth, like the way that
Bring beauty back to birth.
yeah, and even the women who aren't mothers yet, I want them to be, like it is, it's a rite of passage. I want them to be so excited and eager to learn about this rite of passage, whether they're experiencing it now or they won't be experiencing it for a long time, themselves, but just to experience it with other women in their community so that it is just follows this progression of, yes, she can give birth 10 years later down the road because she's experienced 5 other women in her community give birth. I want to see um, that village mindset come back. I want to, and again, maybe I do love being a doula, and I'm not trying to like actually end the doula business, but I want to see the need for them to be less because
Mm.
women in our lives are so confident in the birthing process and are so honoring of the birthing process that it's a no-brainer that you would want your cousin with you because she loves physiological birth. It's just it's a lot of women can't do that because a lot of women's family or best friends don't know anything about birth and they won't know anything about birth until they get pregnant and then go to a doctor and they're like, I guess I'm going to do this. That's the progression. There's
Yeah.
no
And the
under
whole image and the whole picture of birth has been so tainted. So when we can really bring it back to the beauty in birth and the empowerment of birth and empower men that this is also a huge stepping stone as a man for your woman, like for your woman to go through this process and for you to support her through this and women to be surrounding other women with love. We're talking about everything starts at birth. I mean, this is everything starts at birth and breaking when we can push through that in this era,
Mhm.
I think that we will break all these stereotypes and all of these things that have happened and all of this harm that has been done. I really do truly believe in the goodness of humanity. And maybe that makes me a little bit naive, but I really do believe that together, like we could do that. And I think that it starts with one, and I think that is like those ripple effects will show themselves over time. So I think that that's also my dream for birth
Yeah.
belongs to women is just to be constantly unafraid to have ripples turn into waves and watch them, watch them go and watch them really cause, exactly the change that they need to change, in this
Yeah.
space. I think it's important.
Yeah. I'm hearing you both say like you want women to take up space in this
Yeah.
space where women have been
We've been told
somehow
not to.
been told not to, been told
Yeah.
to follow instructions, do what you're told, or told trust the experts. We don't want visitors. We don't want anyone, we don't want a doula or grandma or mother in there like, influencing mom and putting misinformation in our head. Like you hear all of this stuff. There's so much control in and fear in the modern medical birth industry. And I try not to demonize it because I know so many women are still birthing in hospitals and I don't want to create unnecessary fear, but it's also so important to call it out when we see it, the fear and the control, because it is so pervasive. It is abusive. It is toxic. It is a scam. Like I agree with all those things. And yet we are still so connected to this toxic system. And so many women are still birthing there, whether naively or because they really truly don't have other options they feel safe with. And yet as women, we make this the hospital and the doctors and the modern, obstetric community or maternity care, the bad guy. And yet as women, we've given up our role.
Yeah.
We've given up our authority in the birth space as mothers, as sisters, as friends who have traditionally throughout the history supported each other in labor. We've given that up. And we've said, oh, go to the doctor, do what you're told, get the induction, get the drugs, like just outsource your power and autonomy and just do what you're told. And we are perpetuating this learned helplessness, this disempowerment as women, and setting our sisters up for trauma and our nieces and nephews up for trauma and disconnection and things that women have to then take years to heal from. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's what I'm hearing come through your message so strongly, is that this is the space that belongs to women. Its birth belongs to women, and not just the woman giving birth, but the women supporting her, the mothers, the grandmas, the sisters, the friends, like making birth accessible again to women, and not only accessible, but normalizing our role and our freedom and permission to take up space in this birth community, and making it a community again, because it's not even a community. It's like oh, you're pregnant, go to the hospital. We don't even like put on your blinders. We don't see it. We don't talk about it. We just see the little baby with the bonnet on after it all goes down and the blood is all cleaned up. And like you're creating space again for women to be in that space, to be in that birth space, to get your hands dirty, to be boots on the ground, to support and not need a ton of certificates and qualifications and permission. You're giving the permission. You're a woman, you have permission to be in the birth space, because that's where women belong. That's the message I'm hearing.
Yes.
I love it.
100%.
I love it so much. And I've had it on my heart to create this, to create a space, to create more training, to create more accessibility. And yet, like you, the doula, sort of the birth industry, the doula industry felt there was this like twofold, like, I'm not sure where to really, what the work is, because it feels like so much doula work is like hand holding and like, oh, I'll come rescue you and save you. And I'm like, that didn't feel right to me. It also didn't feel right to like, let me just make this a giant business with turnover and churn and like get rich. And I'm like, yes, women doulas deserve to be paid, but how can we make it authentic? How can we make it truly serving women in a way that is also sustainable? Because it is hard work. It is, doula work is not for the faint of heart, as you both know. And so thank you for sharing your wisdom. And I'm just so inspired by your vision for what you see in the future of truly going back to birth work as a sacred work that includes women, that women get to take up these spaces and support one another. It's such a beautiful picture. And I just want to thank you for painting that for all of us.
Thank you so much for letting us. It really means a lot to us to be seen in this work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I see you, and I know my listeners see you, and we support you. And I hope there's more opportunities for us to work together in this shared vision of empowering women in all of these spaces. Where can my listeners and where can women find you if they want to connect with you and order merch? You guys definitely check out their merch. It is so good. I love it. Where can they find you?
Everything's all on our website at birthbelongstowomen.com. That's where we have all of our goodness and our merch and our mentorship and our directory. I forgot to mention, we have a directory of over 100 women who are in our mentorship. And so if you are looking for a doula, you can go to our website and you will scroll down and there's a directory with a map, and we have women in the United States, we have women in Europe, we have women in Canada, we have women all over who have that heart of servants and not to serve women and not the system.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for coming and sharing your hearts as doulas, as women, as mothers, and for empowering everyone listening today. So have a great day, you guys, and we'll catch you on the next episode.